Greetings everyone, Peter Sco for Music is a Journey. Hey, not long ago I did a video on the first 10 albums of Pink Floyd, and I hadn't really listened to my Pink Floyd albums for quite a long time, and it was really cool going back and listening to the first 10 albums again and listening carefully to each of the tracks. Okay, so I was missing a Magumma, but I'll get it. But after that I decided to continue listening, moving on with The Wall, The Final Cut, Momentary Lapse of Reason, The Division Bell. I still haven't got The Endless River. But anyway, I was listening to The Wall. Here we go. And I'll tell you, I really love this album. I've always loved it ever since, 1987, I think it was, when I got into Pink Floyd. I really loved the album. I watched the movie on VHS. I rented it, probably watched it like half a dozen times over a course of a week or something. I actually should probably get it. And I just really loved that whole concept, the whole story, and all the details. And what I really love about this concept album is that there's so much detail in. You've got the songs and the lyrics, but there are just all these other things that come in, sound effects and people talking and so on, which I really love concept albums that have that kind of thing, like, elements from the story are actually played out in the songs or between the songs. So of course I've listened to this album I don't know how many times. I do listen to it probably about every 3 to 5 years, once again all the way through, just to experience it, And as I was listening to it this time, there were some things I was thinking about that caught my attention in the past, but I really started to consider some things about them. And so I want to mention 5 points, just 5 things that I picked up this time listening to The Wall. Okay, first of all, we open the side 1 of the second album with a song called Goodbye Blue Sky. And at the very beginning, we hear some birds chirping, and we can hear a bit of a distant airplane. And then a very small child's voice says, "Look, Mummy, there's an airplane up in the sky." Now, it's a funny thing because a very good friend of mine in high school, he always said the kid is saying there's no plane up in the sky. And I thought, since we can hear a plane, why would a child of that very, very young age say, "Look, Mummy, there's no plane up in the sky"? I think the kid is saying there's an airplane up in the sky. "Look, Mummy, there's an airplane up in the sky." But anyway, what I thought was interesting about that is the song Goodbye Blue Sky follows with the lyrics like, did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? And I thought this could be significant in 2 ways, what this kid is saying. One is that it is still wartime, and this little innocent child is spotting an airplane. "Oh, look, Mummy, there's an airplane up in the sky," but that plane actually could be an enemy bomber coming in, and the kid's, in a sense, pointing it out is actually something that the mother would fear. However, considering that in the story, the main character of Pink Floyd was an infant at the time of the war and when his father died, I think this is after the war, and he's just a very small child walking with his mother, and he points out that there's an airplane up in the sky. And as we saw in the movie, there's those 2 things to think about. As we saw in the movie, Pink's father was killed when an airplane went and dropped a bomb on the place where he was. So the airplane is kind of significant, that the kid would innocently point out an airplane when it was actually an airplane dropping a bomb that was responsible for his father's death. The other thing could also be, going back to the Battle of Britain and all the bombing that went on, that an airplane up in the sky was something even that the mother should fear. So that the little kid is innocently pointing out an airplane. Wow, isn't it lovely that after the war, a child can point out an airplane and there's nothing to fear, but probably that those impressions of that airplane engine and what that means might still be very fresh in the mother's memory. And so for her, an airplane engine might actually be something that gives her a feeling of anxiety or uneasiness. So that was just one thing I thought. It's just a small thing, but it just could be weighed down with a lot more to it than just that. Okay, the second thing I noticed was at the end of the song, Young Lust. Of course, there's that famous, I don't know if it's famous, but the very pronounced part, the telephone call. Pink is calling back home to his wife while he's out on tour, and his wife is, of course, with another man. And it is the long-distance operator who's calling the number and saying, "This is the United States calling. Would you accept a call from Mr. Pink Floyd to Mrs. Pink Floyd. It's a call from Mrs. Pink Floyd from Mr. Pink Floyd. Will you accept the charges or something like that? And then the guy just hangs up, and then she calls back again, and once more, and of course Pink the whole time in the movie you can see he's hearing this. He knows what's happening because it's a man's voice that answers the phone. Hello. And he's just sinking down and knowing exactly what this means. And the operator is still quite innocently calling, like saying, like, this is the United States calling. Are we reaching it? See, he keeps hanging up, right? He keeps hanging up. And then it's a man answering. And I just thought, like, it's a man answering. Yes, we heard the man's voice. We heard you say he keeps hanging up. And now you're saying it's a man answering. Yes. Isn't that strange that Mr. Pink Floyd is calling Mrs. Pink Floyd, but there's a man answering and he keeps hanging up? Operator, hello? Do you clue in? Because, Pink, he's clued in. He knows what's going on, and he's feeling pretty damn crappy about the whole thing. So, thank you, operator. I think that is just so nicely done. Like, the operator just, it kind of doesn't quite settle on her brain what's happening. And she's just cheerfully going on about, oh, no. But anyway, I just think that's, again, like, it's a small detail that didn't necessarily need to be there, but it just adds that real, like, human quality to it, which is something I find is sprinkled throughout this album. Right, the next point, I think we're over on to side 2 now. Album number 2, that's side 3, I guess, and the song Nobody's Home. So, a very lovely, peaceful song. I think it actually wasn't in the movie, but just before, like, just in the chorus part when he says, like, when I pick up the phone, blum, 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 on the piano, and then there'll be nobody home. That's fine the first time, but the second time it's interesting because as the song is coming to an end, you can hear like a television going on in the background. Pink is in the hotel room watching television, right? And so the second time this happens, he says, when I pick up the phone, piano, blum, 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 and then you hear the television in the background going, surprise, 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 there'll be nobody home. And the timing of that is just so perfect because it's not in the movie. There is no surprise, surprise, surprise in the movie. So I don't know if that was planned or accidental, but it just fits in there perfect. When I pick up the phone, surprise, 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 there'll be nobody home. Okay. So another thing now is in the song Stop, or the track Stop, which is just a little short bit there, stop, I want to go home, take off this uniform and leave the show. So we know what's happening. Pink is kind of gone out of his mind. He's had this whole fantasy about becoming a kind of British Hitler and, returning Britain to its place as the, most powerful country in the world type of thing. But as I thought about it this time, I just did my video about Pink Floyd's first 10 albums. I'd read a lot about what went on with Syd Barrett. And he says, I want to go home, take off this uniform, and leave the show. Don't you think that's what Syd Barrett was thinking a lot? There were times where he was on stage, where he was just standing there. He wasn't really playing at all, or just playing something very simple. He was in his own space. He often looked like he really didn't want to be there when he was on like those, music television programs. And I know that Syd Barrett keeps getting mentioned throughout Pink Floyd's career there and in Roger Waters' songs. We hear Back from the Wall, like when the band you're, not the wall, when you, Back to the Dark Side of the Moon, when the band you're in starts playing different tunes. That's thinking about Syd Barrett. Of course, the whole Shine On You Crazy Diamond, that's thinking about Syd Barrett. And in The Wall too, we get some references like the inevitable Hendrix Perm. That is also a reference to Syd Barrett. So I wonder this whole, I want to go home, because Syd Barrett later on when he quit the band, he went to live with his mother and spent the rest of his life living with his mother. Which I kind of also wonder if there's not that significance about the mother character in The Wall, if that's not also in some way considering Syd Barrett's mother. Not sure. But anyway, I want to go home, take off this uniform and leave the show. And in Syd Barrett's last contribution to Pink Floyd, Jug Band Blues from A Saucer Full of Secrets. He starts off by saying, "It's awfully considerate of you to think of me here, and I'm much obliged to you for making it clear that I'm not here. And I never knew the moon could be so big. I never knew the moon could be so big. And I'm grateful to you for throwing away my old shoes. And you brought me here instead dressed in red." And on the cover of the Saucer Full of Piper at the Gates of Dawn album, everybody's wearing some kind of darker, like a dark and gold and silvery type psychedelic coats. But Syd Barrett is wearing a red jacket. So, "Brought me here instead dressed in red." Is that a reference to the red jacket he's wearing on the album cover? And then, is that jacket a kind of uniform? So I want to go home, take off this uniform, and leave the show. Are we thinking of Syd Barrett? Are we thinking of Pink Floyd? Is Pink Floyd, the character, actually very much based on Syd? I mean, he does shave his eyebrows, which Syd did when Syd walked into the Wish You Were Here session. So how much of the Pink Floyd character is actually based on Syd Barrett, I wonder? Maybe there are more clues than I noticed. Maybe some of you out there know. Okay, the final thing that I wanted to mention here, and this is not so much an observation of something on the album itself, but the very last track, of course, you know, "All alone or in twos, the ones who really love you." Roger Waters sounding quite a bit like Bob Dylan, I think. But that final track, you know, and in the video, at the end of the video, you see like some kids walking around in the rubble of some, you know, bombed out building. And then one kid picks up a Molotov cocktail, he pulls out the rag and dumps out the gasoline, and the scene freezes, and that's the end of the movie. So I had this in mind as I was listening to it, and then of course the music on the CD stops playing, and in my mind, immediately at that point, two things happened. One, I saw the end credits starting to come up, and two, Saint-Tropez from Metal started playing in my head. "As I reach for a peach, slide a hand on her rind," you know. And I thought, you know, that would actually be such an interesting song if, you know, at the end of The Wall, when that song ends, Saint-Tropez starts playing and the credits start coming up. Try it. Listen, next time, listen to The Wall all the way through, put it on a playlist or something, and then at the end of it, you know, add Saint-Tropez on the playlist and see what happens when you get there. Hey, might be a perfect fit. Okay, that's what I wanted to say about The Wall. Those 5 things that I kind of noticed. There are probably tons of other things to pick out about The Wall. The final cut too also has lots of brilliant stuff on it. We're going to end the video there for today. Thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one. Cheers, everyone. Bye.